Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Williams Summit. My name is Julius. I'm currently a senior and I'm going to be your student host for today. This is the first part in our collection of stories on healthcare entrepreneurship during the pandemic. I'm lucky to be here with Laura Veroneau, who graduated from Williams College with a degree in economics and a concentration in legal studies before getting her MBA from MIT. Laura is currently a partner at Optum Ventures, where she and her team have recently won the most prolific corporate venture capitalist award in the digital health sector. First, Laura, congratulations and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So I guess we can just go ahead and start. I guess you've been working in the healthcare industry for a while. Do you mind walking us through how you got to where you are today after leaving Williams?
Yeah, so my journey definitely started at Williams. So I graduated from Williams in 2012. Feels like a long time ago at this point, but I actually have been specialized in healthcare for that entire time period at this point, and started actually through my consulting internship my junior year by specializing in healthcare at that point. So the work that I had to do that summer and the expertise that I built up over that summer always seemed to give me a competitive advantage in that space, and therefore I decided to specialize in it pretty early. So what I decided to do was actually not go into consulting full time, but jump into a startup in the healthcare space and really get experience, hands-on experience with an early stage company in a really exciting space that at the time was focused on delivering care in the home, which is a great trend that we talk about often right now in healthcare as well. I came in as kind of a do everything type of role and ended up running new product development for that company, which was, again, a healthcare-focused startup, sort of Series A type of stage of company. So for me, that taught me, everything from what sales actually means in practice and how product actually works and strategic vision and management and everything like that in a very clear, tangible way in front of me. That company ultimately got acquired by a bigger company, and I found my way into United Health Group for the first time in the healthcare space, which is one of the largest players in the healthcare space. Went into corporate development there and focused on acquisitions and new market entry and international markets and tracking early stage companies in the space. And ultimately, after business school, decided to move into the investing side of things, first with a growth equity fund, and then came over to Optum Ventures, joined as a part of the founding team, and have been here for almost the last 4 years at this point. So kind of a path starting with consulting and ending up as sort of a mix of an operator and an investor, all deeply focused in healthcare.
Awesome. And did you always know you kind of wanted to end up working with startups, or is that something that kind of happened along the way?
It's a good question. I definitely didn't know. There were two big decisions for me. Well, there were probably many big decisions for me while I was at Williams, but two that stick out most prominently. I think the first was that specialization question was scary to me at the time in terms of going deeply in healthcare and, a fear of maybe being pigeonholed down the line. And the second, was really about going into a startup, which I imagine, though I don't know, might be more commonplace now coming out of Williams, or going to a tech company might be more common. But when I was in school, it was generally for the econ majors, banking or consulting. So a little bit of a different path that I took. So I would say, no, that was not my plan going into school. But as I really thought about all the innovation that I watched coming to healthcare, or thought would come to healthcare through the work I did in that consulting internship, I got really interested in the space and decided to make that jump from a specialization standpoint. And then on the startup side, it was really just the best way I could figure out to really understand what happens inside of a business and how to understand some of the innovation that was happening in the space at those earlier stages of companies. But definitely was not my intent going into Williams, just sort of found my way there. I think since I went to that company in the early days, I've always hovered around early stage companies. I love entrepreneurs. I love the growth and the passion of early stage companies. But as you can probably tell, I'm equally attracted to the scale of a really large company like a United Health Group. So I find myself now sitting right in the middle of the two, working very closely with the greatest, I think, biased, but the greatest entrepreneurs out there, and helping them access the scale of some of the largest incumbents in the space. So that's kind of how it looked for me.
Awesome. And do you mind, I guess, like kind of going into that, like sitting in the middle, like what exactly does Optum Ventures do, and what is your mission?
Yeah, so Optum Ventures is a venture capital firm affiliated with United Health Group. United Health Group is, anywhere between Fortune 5 and Fortune 7 company, depending on the year. One of the largest healthcare incumbents in the space, with both a large platform on the health insurance side across commercial books of business, Medicare, Medicaid books of business, and also a really large healthcare entity called Optum underneath its umbrella as well, that focuses on more of the healthcare services businesses and technology overall, big care delivery operation, big data and analytics business, and big pharmacy business as well. And so we are affiliated with United Health Group, and essentially what we do, we have over $600 million under management in our funds, and we act as a VC does. So we invest our money into the best companies we can find in the space, and manage those investments over the lifetime of our fund, or as long as it takes, with those companies, and are looking to really fundamentally change healthcare. So we invest all the way from seed stage companies through to growth equity companies. And generally, when you think about us in healthcare, kind of everything outside of pharma, biotech, and devices. And our mission, I think, at the core of it is to really bring truly differentiated healthcare expertise into the healthcare ecosystem on the startup side, and to act as more of a connector and more of a navigator for a lot of these early stage companies, really trying to penetrate the large healthcare landscape. And I'd say my mission as a part of all of that is to do or to serve our entrepreneurs the best way I possibly can, and the best way we possibly can as a firm. So that is for sure our North Star and the thing we think about most.
The title of this segment is, stories from the beginning of the pandemic. So I was wondering if you had any particular stories from the chaos, particularly in the healthcare market, that was going on this time last year, that highlight some of the ways that VCs and entrepreneurs, I guess, had to rethink healthcare.
Yeah, it has been a wild 18 months, I would say, for the healthcare industry, I think, as everybody knows, but also a breakout year for digital health and innovative healthcare companies at the startup level, which means, those that partner with the entrepreneurs and the incumbents and fund those companies have had a front row seat and a really interesting year as well. So I would say this has been my busiest time for sure in the last 4 years with OV. And there's been a lot of, progress that has been made as well. I like to tell a story. It's almost exactly a year ago today, maybe a couple of weeks back, before everything was really closed down in 2020. I was on a panel for, at a conference, small conference event. And the panel was actually called Disruptors or Incumbents, like who will win in terms of innovation. And I sat with a major health system CEO, a major tech sort of coming into healthcare type of healthcare leader, and a payer, a CEO of an insurer as well. And, it was meant to be a pretty, I think, a panel that had a lot of differing opinions, maybe a little bit of controversy with differing opinions. And I'm up there to represent the startups and the venture landscape, obviously thinking that early stage companies would be the great source of innovation in the space. And the funny thing on that panel was that everybody agreed. Everybody agreed that incumbents would need to partner with early stage companies in order to truly drive the system forward, have better consumer experience and healthcare outcomes in general. But so we ended the panel, and the unspoken sort of thing was that everybody wants to partner in theory, but there's no urgency to do so. And historically, many incumbents in the space were extremely hard to work with for an early stage company, in many ways blocked innovation in the healthcare space unintentionally. And so that sort of unspoken narrative, 24 hours later, you know, every event in the country, the Final Four, the conference we were at was canceled, you know, literally right after that panel. And urgency, you know, came into the universe for healthcare companies across all stages of their growth or size or whatever else. So for me, the last 18 months have been crazy in terms of the partnerships that we've seen and the ways that we've seen digital health companies, early stage companies, step up to address the needs for consumers domestically and all over the globe. For everything from, we have a company, Let's Get Checked, on the testing side that does COVID testing, everything from testing through to care delivery with other companies in the home, to, you know, pharmacy delivery, all these innovations that the system as it sits today, or as it sat a year ago, was not able to effectively, you know, deliver. They sort of turned to the early stage landscape, partnered, and I think those companies were prepared and had breakout years and stepped up in ways that I think have redefined how we think about consumer experience and you know, our healthcare experience overall for the future.
It's amazing. And I guess after all that, I mean, obviously health isn't fixed. I guess there's still a lot of issues. And I was just curious, like, what do you think are one of the biggest challenges, or some of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs and VCs are working together in the healthcare landscape to fix right now, especially, you know, as we kind of transition to a more stable state in the pandemic? Not yet, of course. But.
Yeah, I would say, I think we've seen a lot of focus on care delivery in the last few years. So when I look at our portfolio, or look at a lot of the companies that have raised significant fundraising rounds or have had great success in the last few years, a lot of it is around innovative care delivery models that are often condition specific. So, you know, Livongo in diabetes, or Hinge in the MSK space, or, you know, we have a company, Able To, in the behavioral health space. We've seen a lot of innovative virtual models, or just different types of clinic models coming to the market that really focus on care delivery for significant areas, or significant areas of need or spend in the healthcare space broadly. We've seen it largely, you know, centered around conditions. And then I think we've seen a lot of infrastructure that supports those care delivery models, and maybe supports the next generation of telehealth, where you need lab testing in the home to be able to do a broader scope of services, or you need pharmacy fulfillment or delivery that is more seamless to help with adherence and help with those models extending into the home as well. So there's definitely been a large focus on care delivery and innovative models by necessity, I think, in the space, and a general acceptance and willingness to partner around some of those areas. I think we're starting to see broader infrastructure plays across healthcare now that there is more familiarity with partnering with these types of companies and innovators in the space. And you're seeing really interesting matches of deep healthcare entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs with deep healthcare knowledge, and technologists that I like to point to TruePill, one of our companies. Sid is a deep technologist. Omar knows the pharmacy space cold as a pharmacist. And that type of pairing we're starting to see in areas that, you know, historically there might have been less willingness to partner with just a true, you know, technology-minded group coming to the table trying to rewire how insurance companies operate or something like that. So what we're starting to see now is a lot of that infrastructure innovation that does hit these heavy areas like payments or insurance infrastructure on the operational side, and some of those other pieces. So that's kind of what we're observing in the space. I would say the big thing or area for opportunity that I still see, it's still hard to navigate all of these different solutions, and the funding across the space, a proliferation of companies across all these different areas. I just spoke about the condition-specific solutions, and with all the funding and the big funds being raised in the space, there are going to be even more behavioral companies, even more, diabetes focused companies, even more of XYZ type of companies. Mm-hmm. The thing that's lacking to me is the navigator or the real way to thread these solutions together, or the aggregator, I guess you could say in a different way, to simplify the experience for consumers, members, patients, whatever you want to call the person on the other end of the story. But today, I think we're in a moment of a ton of innovation, but at some point, if there are 10 MSK solutions or 10 cardiovascular solutions, there's going to be exhaustion and difficulty to understand how you piece these things together so that it's not just additional silos that are really hard to navigate and tie together for the patient at the end of the day, because I think that's going to be hard from an actual consumer experience, but also health outcomes perspective if you're receiving care in a bunch of different silos. So I haven't seen that solved yet. I think that's the next generation to come, and I don't know that that's a company versus being some really interesting partnerships coming together and sort of aggregating these things in a more sophisticated way.
And so I guess even extending that a little further, and bringing it back to the student piece, what role do we as students and, people just entering the workforce kind of play in driving that kind of consumer demand? What are the things that we're asking for that I guess healthcare is maybe learning to be more equipped to handle?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of these solutions, the typical user is kind of a middle-aged female. That is the biggest profile in a lot of these different assets, regardless of what you're sort of talking about, unless it's, a company focused on non-female things, I suppose. But I think what we're starting to see, building off of that care delivery comment before, we're starting to see sophistication around personalization. So thinking about, matching of providers differently, or thinking about actual delivery of care that's more tailored to specific populations, LGBTQ population, or specific types of payer businesses that they specialize for. So anyway, all of that to say, I think there is definitely a trend towards not just being a behavioral health company that is a broad platform and happens to attract a middle-aged female, often if going through an employer channel, and instead being more conscious up front with the care that you're delivering so that you're actually serving maybe populations that don't engage with these other platforms or don't have as much access to care in different ways. So I think that's one thing that isn't necessarily, the young generation coming out of high school or college demanding those things, but definitely a need that's recognized with the current populations and split of populations in the market right now. I think we're just probably starting to see how platforms will have to shift for your generation, because I think generally speaking,
we don't really know how to do anything.
The interest comes a little bit later, but I think the biggest thing with college students in the last, I'd say 5 to 7 years has been, I personally think a lot of the movement on the behavioral health side, I always think that sort of started from college campuses. You had Columbia and a few other schools 7 years ago petitioning around not having enough access to mental health services. And to me, those are some of the things I remember first about the wave of behavioral health companies. And I love the behavioral health space, and I'm very passionate about it. We have 9 investments in the space. So I do think there's a big voice and a big influence that your population, your peers across universities across the country can have in terms of voicing areas that are high need areas. And I think behavioral health was a great example of that. But yeah, we are seeing I don't even know what TikTok really is, but we are seeing companies that are advertising through TikTok and things like that now, which you can imagine is a little bit hard to evaluate, but we're starting to see different channels used for customer acquisition and things like that to tap into different populations as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And I guess like kind of focusing in on the Williams student, you deal with a lot of different moving parts. I'm curious, like, where has your Williams and specifically your liberal arts degree, been a significant advantage, and when has it been a disadvantage?
Yeah, I would view it as such an advantage. The way that I think about it, and we have a lot of NESCAC people actually on my team, kind of accidentally, but so we talk about this quite a bit. But I think how you should view or how I view my liberal arts education, I've always been more comfortable in ambiguous environments because I feel like the education at Williams or other schools like Williams gives you the tools to be able to just think critically, to process complex information and to simplify it across a whole bunch of different areas, whether you're focused on econ or taking psych of sports if they still have that, or whatever the classes are across different areas within the broad liberal arts education. And so to me, it's such a weapon to be able to be comfortable just problem solving and thinking in ambiguous environments and being able to structure yourself and your thoughts in a way that allow you to excel in those environments. Because I think ultimately a lot of those environments are the environments where you can really carve out a path for yourself and, hopefully change the industry you're in, the company you're in, the world you're in. I think the sort of negative side of that, I probably always thought I would go from Williams to investment banking. I didn't do that, obviously. But there are tactical areas and tactical skills like financial modeling and thinking about, things you can get out of your post-grad path or job that some other people have explicit training around for 4 years in undergrad. And so I think just being aware of that and conscious of that, as you figure out your career journey and figuring out how you can pick up some of those pieces, if they are important to your path, is important. So consciously, when I decided to not go that route and instead went consulting and ultimately startup route out of Williams, I knew I would go to a quantitative business school to get formal training in those areas and pick it up along the way, if I didn't have the chance to in specific roles. So yeah, I think it's very hard to find the type of people that you have at Williams. And I think of that dynamic thinking ability and the ability to navigate unstructured environments is so impossible to teach, and something that I think you probably don't realize you have yet, but you will at some point, versus being, in such a structured undergrad environment that, ultimately probably causes you to need more structure post-grad that might limit some of the optionality you have in terms of career path.
As a soon-to-graduate senior, that makes me feel great. And then the last question I wanted to ask, this is a question we ask everyone. What is your bumper sticker? If you had to leave the Williams community with one sentence or phrase, what would it be?
So for a bumper sticker, so I'm going to do like a short bumper sticker, and then I'm going to read a quote, if that works, Julia.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay, so my short actual bumper sticker, I didn't get it into this here. I am a massive Kobe Bryant fan and have admired him for most of my life. And as I sat, my friends, Khalid, if you happen to be watching this, can attest to this. I used to sit with a very small TV in my dorm room to watch all of his games, even though I'm a Boston Celtics fan as well. So for me, a bumper sticker would have to be Mamba mentality, and it's what I try to bring everywhere. And I think the work ethic and the perseverance and the drive and passion that Kobe had is always top of mind for me, and something I think about often, and something I try to bring to every single day. So my short bumper sticker would be, Mamba mentality. The quote that I would say, which is a little long, but I'll try to read it quickly. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he is always doing both. That, I think, perfectly captures me and how I approach my work and life. And I think if you can marry the two, you know, to me, that's been a great path to fulfillment and happiness. So that's what I would leave you with.